A very warm welcome back, dear Africa Business Jumpstarters, to my YouTube channel, where I teach you how to do business in Africa the right way, and above all, how to create more freedom for yourself. So today I want to really dive into the best countries in Africa to do business in, to invest in, or to move to. That is true for those of you in the diaspora, but also for those of you on the continent who are looking to diversify. Now, before I get started, I just want to make a small suggestion, and that is, why don't you watch this video on your terrace, in your garden, or in your little courtyard, or on a park bank if you don't have a garden at home. Take off your shoes, take off your socks, and ground with Mother Earth. The magnetism of the earth will cut down the inflammation in your body, and you can heal while you watch. Without further ado, let's dive straight in. To identify the best countries in Africa to do business in is not an easy task, because there are so many moving factors and no African country ticks all the boxes. And therefore, I'm really just doing an assessment. Maybe it is helpful to some of you. And let's dive straight in. So before I show you the countries, I want to talk about what is really important to consider. And this first box I'm going to divide into 4. So the first area to consider is the risk opportunity ratio in a different country. So we have a set of risk factors, such as corruption, such as lack of dollar access, such as difficulty to trade across borders. And we have economic opportunity, and the more opportunity you have in a given African country, the more attractive, of course, it is for business and investment. The second quadrant then is peace. So what we actually mean is good governance, but you know, that is so subjective, and I don't want to make political statements, so I'm going to just call it stable governance for now. So the next one is just the ease of doing business. So the ease of doing business really explains how many conducive policies are in place in a given African country to make it easy for you to get started and run your business. And lastly, it's you. So what I mean by that is, who are you as a person? Do you want a very quiet African country where you can retire and find your inner peace? Or are you looking for a large economy with a lot of buzzing activities where you have a lot of opportunity, you can go out and get a lot of experience? But you can also mean, can you actually survive in extreme heat, or do you need moderate climates? Because again, we have both in Africa. Are you scared of malaria and you can't really function properly or go out in the evening because you're so worried? I had clients like that as well. So all of that you need to take also into consideration when making your selection. So when it comes to this particular section here, the risk opportunity ratio, that in itself you can divide into 4 categories, and I'm going to blend in a graph so you know exactly what I mean. And in that graph you will see that you have 4 ratio categories. One is the high risk, high opportunity category. The other one is the high risk, low opportunity category. You really want to stay away from those countries. Then you have the low risk, high opportunity countries, and you have the low risk, low opportunity countries. And in my view, the last 2, the low risk, high opportunity, and even the low risk, low opportunity, are the best countries to do business in and invest in the context of Africa, especially during a globe in turmoil. So I want to say a few things to each of the categories. So when we're looking, for example, at the ease of doing business, you know, your top countries here in terms of ease of doing business are Mauritius, Rwanda. Kenya has been trending up, all right? So Kenya is doing very well, putting a lot of conducive policies into place. And then you have, for example, South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, just to name a few. These are the top countries in terms of doing business in Africa, in terms of how easy it is, the conducive business and policy environment. Here, for example, when we are looking at the different risk and opportunity categories, you know, you have a country like Nigeria, for example, which is a powerhouse, economic powerhouse in Africa. It is a high risk, high opportunity. It's a high risk, high opportunity country. So yes, you do have a lot of opportunity in Nigeria or countries that belong to the high risk, high opportunity category, but you also have a lot of risk. Now, when the globe is already in turmoil and it's becoming more and more difficult to do business and invest, I would do two things. Either stay away from the high risk countries if you're not very experienced in business, but you can also choose a low risk industry in a high risk country. So if I was to invest, for example, or do business in Nigeria, I would start with a low risk industry because it is a high risk country. Now, the low risk industry, for example, could be that I will do corporate training in Nigeria, or that I'm offering tours to tourists coming to Nigeria. So that is one way to address the high risk in a certain country. And lastly, of course, if you are in Nigeria, then you also have the opportunity to diversify into other African countries. Now, when it comes to peace and good governance, or as I want to call it now, not to offend anyone, stable governance, well, I think peace is so crucial during a globe that is already in turmoil and where we are experiencing more and more political and violent conflict. Now, again, for each category, there's so much I could say, but what I want to say here is it is not just about armed conflict and war, but also the level of internal stability. You know, how likely is it that political conflict or uprisings will occur, or how likely is it that crime rates go up? And of course, that is also something to consider, because when my clients ask me, what about South Africa and Kenya, which are some of the best countries to go to and to do business in, I made my clients always aware that, yes, these will be the first countries, however, that will experience internal challenges, increased crime rates, and increased political turmoil, because we have seen it in the past. Well, Kenya and also South Africa and also Nigeria again, you know, will be more prone to that for various reasons. And I think, again, I said enough about you coming to the entire picture and what it is that you prefer. Now, here I want to say a little bit more, and I want to actually create another table. So when you're making a decision in where to start your African business, it is also important to understand what is your industry of interest, because your industry of interest will also inform some of the best countries for you particular to go to. If you're into fashion, for example, well, then you would want to go maybe to Nigeria, to Ghana, to Kenya, South Africa, or Ethiopia, where you have a big industry around fashion, around apparel. The apparel industry is very strong in these countries, and you may want to stay away from other countries where the apparel and fashion industry are really not on an upward trending path at all. And the same is really true for any industry. So if you want to go into cybersecurity or IT, or you want to go into the medical field, you have to choose the best African country in regards to, is your industry of interest on a clear upward trend there, or is it still in its infant shoes? Important, and I will not say much, but I think what's becoming more and more important is the access to water, to water. So, you know, the access to water, to clean water, is really an issue across the world, and it will affect food production and just economic activity and livelihoods. And I would choose African countries also in regards to, is there enough water in the country? Or if you're investing in real estate, for example, or in agriculture, do I have enough access to water? So Rwanda, for example, has a lot of lakes. Uganda as well. You have Lake Victoria also, really bordering several African countries. You have Lake Malawi. You have Ghana in the Volta region. So look for countries also where you have a lot of access to water if you want to reside there. That's just another aspect to take into consideration. The next one is politics. Well, I'm going to stay away from making any suggestions in regards to politics. Here, there's no judgment, there's no validation of what I'm going to say now, but pure objective assessment. And that is, we are now in a world struggle for global superiority. So especially West, US-led, and the East, China, Russia-led. And it's all about who's going to be the boss. Now, that, of course, will significantly influence African politics. And unfortunately, that's just a fact, and it's already playing out. We can look at the conflicts of Sudan. I should also mention the Arab countries who also have huge interest, political interest, and who play a big role when it comes to politics on the continent of Africa. So I mentioned Sudan, look at Ethiopia, look at Burkina Faso. Unfortunately, and very, very sadly, we will see a lot of proxy conflicts. And I believe they will increase across the continent of Africa. And what I also believe is that if your African government is against the USA, well, the USA, which is really the, what shall we say, the chief of infiltration in African governance, together with other countries, of course, such as, you know, France, Great Britain, and especially again the Arab countries, but also in economic terms, China, and in military terms also Russia. So it is not a this or that side. I don't think really that all of these parties are working in the interest of Africa. They're all working in their own interest. But what I do believe is that those countries in Africa that are clearly taking an anti-USA stance will be more prone to conflict. And lastly, you have investor confidence, and also the availability of US dollar reserves. A lot of African countries already face a shortage of access to dollars, and that has serious implications. We have seen that in Ethiopia, for example, in Zimbabwe. I mean, it is very complex, but the access or the lack of access to US dollars is a major, major issue across certain African countries, where businesses as a result will not be able to access their dollars in the bank account, and as a result they have to stop or pause business activities. So that is true, for example, if you have a business in Africa, let's say manufacturing, or you are importing certain goods or ingredients, and you need to purchase those items in US dollars. Well, if the central bank in that African country is shutting down the access to the US dollar, including in your own bank account, you have to pause your business or even stop it altogether. So maybe here I should also say we have already 3 African countries that defaulted on their debt. So that is, for example, it's Zambia, it is Ghana, very unexpectedly, and it is Ethiopia. So again, take that into consideration. You have 3 countries that are already defaulting on their debt, and they're now in the hands of the IMF. So generally saying, we can also see some countries trending up in terms of economic opportunity, investor confidence, peace, and so on, ease of doing business. And we can see other countries trending down. And of course, clearly trending down is Burkina Faso, unfortunately. Burkina Faso. Trending down, unfortunately, is also Ethiopia, both in terms of investor confidence, in terms of the economy, in terms of the political situation. We also sadly have Zambia, which really was a poster child 5-7 years ago, fortunately trending down in many aspects as well. And then, of course, Zimbabwe. And it's so sad because all these countries were clear lower risk, high opportunity countries. Sadly, they're all trending down, which means risk has dramatically increased in those countries. And we also have some countries trending up. There are, for example, Tanzania, Ivory Coast, the Gambia, to name a few. But let me now give you the list of the best countries in Africa to do business and invest in. And as you can see, I'm not just listing them out of preferences, but this is the kind of assessment I'm doing behind the curtain and taking everything into consideration. Some countries are trending up for something, trending down for something else. Here is my list. Number 1 is Tanzania and Zanzibar. Not the best for ease of doing business, but it ticks a lot of other boxes, especially long peace and security, and more conducive business environment, huge infrastructure development, and investor confidence. You have to consider Tanzania. Again, doing business there is not for the faint-hearted. Even the immigration policy is not easy, so keep that in mind if you are a member of the diaspora in particular. Number 2 is Rwanda. Well, Rwanda, top of doing business in Africa, is on number 2. It has a lot of stability. Unfortunately, we do have increased conflict now with neighboring Congo, DRC, Congo, which is something to consider. But guess what? Rwanda has immense investor confidence. Number 3, we have Kenya. Kenya, really a powerhouse still in sub-Saharan Africa. Ease of doing business is wonderful in Kenya. A lot of opportunity. Unfortunately, the downside here is a lot of corruption and increasing crime, among other. Number 4 is Ghana. Well, another giant in West Africa with ease of doing business, ample of opportunity left, right, and center. It is also a country with a long history for peace. Unfortunately, Ghana, due to poor governance, fell into debt now. Nevertheless, investor confidence is quite high here. Number 5, the Gambia. The Gambia is really trending. A small country, limited opportunity. You know, there's opportunity in real estate, tourism, agriculture, to name a few, but wonderful peace, very easily to be overlooked, and it's improving as well. Number 6 is Senegal. Same here for Senegal. It is a country with a lot of growing opportunity and long-standing peace in West Africa. Number 7 is Morocco. Morocco, again, another amazing market in Northern Africa with ample of opportunity, stable and good governance, peace, and also the proximity to Europe. Number 8, we have Botswana. Botswana also has ease of doing business. It lacks some opportunities since it is a very small market, but you also have lower corruption in Botswana and Rwanda as compared to other countries in Africa, for example. Ivory Coast. Ivory Coast has made huge improvements towards a conducive business environment, and a lot of the Francophone countries and Western countries in Africa decide to do business with Ivory Coast. So the main influx of people into Ivory Coast are actually business people. Number 10, Togo. Well, Togo is not really that much on the list of anyone. It's very rarely that you hear about Togo, but guess what? Togo has an amazing ease of doing business. It has great opportunity, and it has a very safe and stable environment. Number 11 is South Africa. Of course, still an economic leader in Africa. However, as a market, it is more competitive and crime will increase. It has also a lot of issues politically, plus it has huge problems with the access to reliable electricity. So a lot of manufacturing companies and businesses suffered as a result. Number 12, and I will bundle them up, are Africa's islands. So it's Mauritius, it's Cape Verde, and the Seychelles. They have great ease of doing business, peace and stability, very limited opportunity, but if you want a quiet life, those are the places to be. And Zanzibar, of course, as part of Tanzania, again, another island to look out for. And last but not least, I'm going to put on the list Uganda. Well, Uganda is very often overlooked. Yes, it is not as easy doing business in Uganda, and you face corruption very often across industries in Uganda, but Uganda has amazing opportunity, and it's just one of those very often overlooked gems. So dear Africa Business Jumpstarters, here you go. Let me know in the comment section what is your favorite country, or maybe what I missed. So again, today was not a scientific study. It was my personal assessment with everything that I know, and I put that together to make the selection a little bit easier for you. Stay blessed, stay healthy wherever you are, and I'll see you next time.